Hi y'all! In today's video, I want to discuss the topic of solo hiking and solo backpacking. This video is going to be in 3 parts. I want to first answer your questions that you submitted in the comments. I also want to share with you some other fellow hikers' solo hiking and solo backpacking stories. And lastly, I want to give you some tips on how to make it easier to get out and do your first solo hike or solo backpacking trip. I have been wanting to do a video on this topic for quite a while now. I did my first solo hike in 2015, and I did my first solo backpacking trip 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. And I actually stayed at the campsite all alone. There was no one else at that campsite that night. If you are interested, you can watch that video, and I'll be sure to put a link in the description. One of the reasons that I wanted to do a video about solo hiking and solo backpacking is because one of the things that kept coming up by a lot of people when I would posted my photos on social media, or I posted the video on YouTube, or just talking to people in person, is kind of the same reaction, is that solo hiking is dangerous. It's dangerous, you shouldn't do it, it's just bad, you're gonna get hurt, just all kinds of comments. And I just feel like that's something I want to dispel at this point with this video. And also I just want to be able to empower you to know that what's important is overcoming your fears. I think it's a lot more important to be knowledgeable than just to say, oh, hey, there's this fear, so I'm going to go with that fear. I think I may have picked like the worst spot. There's ants everywhere. Oh well. The main question that was asked was obviously in relation to it being dangerous. And I apologize if I get your all's name mispronounced. I am Southern, and sometimes we don't say things good. Or, well, at least I don't. Missy Bettis, and she asked, do you carry some form of protection? Emily M., she also asked, what safety precautions and protective measures do you take? Anything you take with you on solo hikes that you don't take on non-solo hikes? So what I carry when I solo hike or solo backpack. These are the forms of protection of things that I carry. I carry bear spray, and I carry a whistle, and I carry a knife. And now this knife I actually recently bought just a few months ago at Appalachian Trail Days. Before that, I was carrying kind of one of those foldable pocket knives. So you see, it's not a huge knife. I mean, it's like a 2-inch blade there. One of the things I really like about this particular knife is it's all one piece of steel. So it just makes it a lot more durable and stronger of a knife. Those are the things that I carry for protection. I do not carry a gun. I don't carry a gun in my regular everyday life. So I wouldn't personally carry a gun on the trail. And I am by no means anti-gun. I have shot a gun before. I've been to a shooting range. I just think that guns are a very powerful weapon. And with great power comes great responsibility. I'm sorry, I have to do the Spider-Man quote. But seriously, I mean, it's something that if that's what you're going to choose to do, I think you just have to be very aware of the power you hold with a gun. I have never been in a situation ever in over 2,000 plus miles of hiking or backpacking that I felt I should have had a gun. Never, not one time. Not against animals or people. So I think bear spray is a really good alternative to have, especially against, really honestly, against animals or people. And to Emily's question about, is there anything that I would carry on solo hikes that I would not carry on non-solo hikes? At least in the Smoky Mountains, I do not carry bear spray if I hike with someone else. I personally just feel like it's not necessary really to have, especially if you have another person with you. So I typically do not carry bear spray. And sometimes I don't carry the knife either, but that's really probably the only thing different that I carry on a solo hike. And this one is from Heather Lynn's Mothers. She asked, when you see other hikers, do you get nervous and hope they are just hikers with no harm? And then this is sort of a kind of a similar question to that, is from Victoria Morgan, and she said, what do you do if you see someone sketchy? Do you ever feel unsafe on the trail alone? Truthfully, I have never in any of my solo trips honestly seen anyone that I got a weird vibe from. If I ever was in a situation to where someone made me feel uncomfortable, I would try to just get away from that person. Like, I just not be within the vicinity of that person. If it's at a campsite to where they're staying at that campsite, I probably would just try to have my campsite as far away from them as I possibly could. If I truly felt like that uncomfortable, like just something said to me, you need to not be here around where this person is, I would leave. I mean, if I had to cut my backpacking trip short, that's what I would do. If I was staying at a campsite and someone there was just someone I just did not feel comfortable with, I would just probably pack my things up and go to another campsite. And that's probably what I would do. Or I would just I guess it depends on the mileage out to my car. But probably my first alternative would be just to hike to a different campsite. Jeanette Jensen asked, have you had any experiences that made you afraid? What do you do to work through the fear after the sun goes down? So on my first trip, one of the things I did to make me less afraid to sleep in my tent that night was I got to the campsite really early. And I didn't really do that on purpose. It was kind of on accident. I got to the campsite with about 5 or 6 hours of daylight to spare. And I had walked around, seen everything, but during that time I never saw one animal or anything. And that actually helped a lot, because that helped me to become very familiar with the campsite. Another thing I did was I downloaded movies onto my iPhone, and I kind of laid in my tent and just watched movies. Having music downloaded on your phone, things like that. I think that can actually help a lot to just give you other voices besides your own. And then as far as experiences that made me feel afraid, the one and only time that I actually felt afraid was the first trip, and there was a really bad thunderstorm, and it was lightning, and the lightning was really close, and that's what scared me. That scared me. I wasn't even scared of bears that night. I was scared of the lightning, and I was more scared of the lightning hitting one of the really tall trees that were surrounding me and crashing on my tent. Now, I was afraid on my solo hike, the very first solo hike that I did. I was quite petrified of every twig, every noise as I was hiking. I was worried that a bear was going to jump out of the woods and eat me. I sang a lot. I talked out loud. I made noises. Polka Dot Cardi said, how do you choose your location? Do you try to choose a location where you'll have cell service, or do you carry something like an inReach? Do you have any tips for building up confidence and becoming more comfortable in backpacking, hiking alone? So the first time I solo backpacked, I chose it because I was trying to complete the 900 miler, which is where you hike all of the open trails in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And I was down to just a few trails left, and there was this like loop of trails that I had to do. And this had already been kind of in my head. I wanted to do some solo backpacking. I'd already done some solo hiking. So that's how I chose my location for that trip. Now, how do I choose as far as like where I want to hike or where I want to backpack? I mean, generally, you're just kind of picking your location based off of what you want to hike and where you want to camp. And as far as like choosing a location with cell service, so in the Great Smoky Mountains, there just isn't cell service. So always keep in mind that that's always going to be, cell service can be sketchy. So I just don't think that something should be like you fully rely on cell service, as far as you need to know how to survive out in the woods by yourself overnight without cell service, just in case. But at this time I do not own an inReach, so I have not done a solo backpacking trip with an inReach or a solo hike, but that is a piece of equipment that I do actually want to purchase. It is just something to give you good peace of mind, and it not even just for yourself, but for your family and friends. So Kelly J. Knapp asked, she discussed how she thinks, there are madmen in the woods and animals that are ready to eat me, getting lost, getting injured, not having cell service. How do you get over that? As far as tips for building up confidence or, getting over the you know, getting over the fears, you just have to do it. You have to walk through your fears. There really is just no other way. The only way you're going to overcome a fear is to face the fear, is to just go through the fear. And that's how you kind of come out on the other side, and you're much more confident by doing so. And I do actually have some tips that will actually help you a little bit to kind of walk through that fear. And I'm going to save those tips for the end of this video. And so just stick around for that. I'll be back to that answer shortly. Paper Tiger 79 asks, have you ever had a trip where things just spiraled out of control into a dangerous situation, like soaking wet gear, freezing temps? Have you considered doing any longer trips, several days or a week, in the backcountry solo? So as far as the first question, I have never had to deal with wet gear at this point on any trip. And inside the backpack I have a contractor bag, and then I always keep all of my gear in stuff sacks. So that's what I do. Sorry, there's like a squirrel over there. Hi, squirrel. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting distracted. Squirrel! I just realized that. Oh, Lord. Anyway, but now there was one night when I was solo backpacking where the temperatures got down a little colder than I think I was anticipating. And although I did have all of my like winter gear with me, for whatever reason, when I got into my sleeping bag, I was just really uncontrollably cold. I just kept shivering. I could not keep warm. But I had on, of course, my clothes, and I had on my down jacket. And I had read where having a whole lot of layers on with a down sleeping bag can actually keep the down from working the way it's supposed to, which is to trap your body heat. I took my down jacket off and let the bag be kind of closer to my skin. And honestly, I almost immediately started warming up. I quit shivering, and I was warm the rest of the night. I'm not telling you to sleep minimally with your clothes, because obviously you got to be careful about getting hypothermia. But in that instance, it actually did really work a lot better. So that's really my only time I would say I've had a situation that I felt concerned, you know, about sleeping, about being out there solo, and, you know, with the weather and things like that. As far as have I considered longer trips, yes, I actually do want to do some longer backpacking trips by myself. I've only done overnights, and I would like to at least try, you know, a 2-day, maybe even a 3-day. Emmy D's, oh gosh, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I can't say this. Ask, hi there, beginner hiker here. Have you ever got lost? Did you take any map courses, etc.? Love your videos. I have never gotten lost on the trail. I've gotten turned around a couple of times and realized it and then turned it back around. I do carry a paper map with me, and I do carry on my phone there are apps that you can download, trail apps that you can download that will basically have GPS and shows the exact location you're at, and it kind of shows the trail. So I do have those on my phone. At this point, I have not taken an actual course, so I do want to do that. But I have not at this point. I feel pretty confident in my capabilities as far as trails go and navigating my way on a trail, but I still think you can never be too confident. Daniel Engel Enduro Films asks, what all do you take in your bag on a solo hike, and what items should a person definitely take with them? I did do a video already of what's in my pack, and that was from when I did a solo backpacking trip. Now granted, a lot of my gear has changed, my shelter, my pack, a few things have changed in that pack, but it's still kind of the basics. But as far as what, you know, you definitely should carry, and this applies to whether you're backpacking or you're doing a day hike, and you should carry the 10 essentials. And I also did a video on that, so, you know, check that out, put that in the description. But that's really important. The things you want to make sure that you are doing when you're going out for a solo trip is to make sure that you don't get hypothermia, that you don't become dehydrated, and that hopefully you don't get lost. And then obviously preventing injury. Well, I think what's even more important is to be prepared before you go out for that hike. And there's multiple things you can do to be prepared. I did also do a video on that as well. So rather than reiterate it all in this one video, just check those videos out. Aaliyah Stevens asked, what was it like the first time you slipped out in the woods by yourself? What is your favorite thing about solo backpacking? And kind of similar question, Gloria Wooten asked, what do you enjoy most about hiking and backpacking, and what advice do you have for beginner hikers and backpackers? The first time sleeping out in the woods by myself was scary. I mean, honestly, I'm not Superwoman here. I was really scared, but I wanted it more than I was scared. And I guess the truth be told, and some of the things you wouldn't know about me, is I've had to kind of face my fears in my life already. I had already done things that I was scared of. I don't feel like you ever really overcome fears. I mean, fear is always still there. Fear is kind of a healthy instinct that we all need to have. It's what helps keep us safe and keeps us alert. So you never really just truly become fearless, but you can walk through that fear. You can go through that fear, come out on the other side and realize, hey, look, I survived and I can do things that I fear, and it's okay. I just have to be smart about it. Now, granted, once I got out and I started hiking, I kind of got over the fear. I realized, oh, you know, I feel really comfortable out here. And then just going back to Gloria's question about what advice I would give a beginner hiker backpacker is to, you know, do your research. You know as much as you can know about the trail you're going to hike. Understand your gear, test out your gear, make sure you have all of the gear that you need. The life of Jazzica, that's cute, ask, what's the longest solo hike you've done? Would you hike a long trail solo? And then Bucker Rocker 1 asks, would you ever through hike the Appalachian Trail? And then I feel like this question kind of also goes along sort of in the same category of an answer. Texas Hikeaholics asked, what park that you haven't visited yet would be your dream backpacking trip and why? The longest solo hike I've done, I want to say, was around about 23 miles. And would I do a long trail solo? Yes. Would I through hike the Appalachian Trail solo? Yes. I hope one day to be able to do that. And what would be my dream backpacking trip? I would probably say it would be through hiking. My goal and dream is to through hike the AT, the PCT, and the CDT. Brad Travis asked, what would be the longest you've hiked within the park and not encountered another hiker? Also, have you hiked in the dark and how long? So the longest I've hiked with and not encountered a hiker. Okay, so on my solo trips, I cannot think of a hike where I did not actually see one other person. Now, there's definitely been times where I hiked a lot of miles and I didn't see somebody else. I mean, I would say maybe like 10 miles. There's definitely places in the Great Smoky Mountains that's pretty backcountry where you're a lot less likely to see somebody. But I feel like I have always seen at least one other person. So now that I have answered your questions, I want to show you some clips from some fellow hikers on their stories and their perspectives of solo hiking.
Hi Gretchen, it's Christina Zukas. My first backpacking trip was 1.5 miles from my car. I chose that site because I knew that it would be an easy hike back to my car if I needed to bail. After that was my first solo. And when I say solo, I mean I hiked solo, carried all my stuff on my back solo, got to camp solo, set up, and left camp by myself. I took your advice, which was brilliant, to choose a campsite that had other people there for my first solo. And it was a full house. We had 20 of us that had reserved spaces there. However, I was alone. I had 13 people ahead of me. I had one guy behind me and one guy on the side of me. And I would have never known it. We were all by ourselves and we had minor chit-chats, minor talks, but other than that, I did everything myself. And I had laid in my tent, looking out the screen and thinking to myself, why in the world? I was so adamant about not backpacking. I was so relaxed, and it was a wonderful experience. And I took comfort knowing that there were other people near me. Although I was solo, these people were strangers. I did not know who they were. And So I didn't have that creature comfort of my crew or my trail buddies hiking with me and camping with me. I was by myself. I woke up, I packed up my stuff, and I hiked out Big Creek to my car. And it was the most wonderful experience knowing that I did it by myself. And I believe wholeheartedly that picking a campsite with other people around was the biggest factor for me. I read on questions that someone else had posted on your YouTube channel. They were asking about safety precautions or protection. I bring bear spray and I bring a knife. The other thing that I bring with me that was a really big factor for myself and for my family, knowing that I was doing this by myself and starting backpacking by myself, was I saved up and I got myself a Garmin InReach Mini, and it gives me peace of mind, and it gives my family peace of mind knowing that I have the means of getting an SOS out if something happens, but I also have the means of getting a little message out to them telling them that I've arrived at campsite or I'm leaving the campsite. Other than that, I have now signed myself up for 2 more backpacking trips for the month of September, which I'm pretty excited about. And although I'm not quite ready for solitude solo camping, I have made sure that there are going to be other people at the locations that I'll be backpacking at. So I hope that my little pieces of information or my experiences help your viewers. And I hope that this empowers some people that you can do it. I promise you, you will love it. I hope this helps. Thanks, Gretchen, for letting me give my 2 cents. And happy hiking and happy camping.
Hi guys, my name is Melissa, and Gretchen asked me to share a few of my solo hiking experiences with you. So I just wanted to start out by saying solo hiking is one of those things where I said I would never, ever, ever do, but yet I did it. I've done it several times, and I'll continue to do it several more. My very first solo hike was an in and out. I hiked Middle Prong Trail to Greenbrier Ridge Trail up to the AT, and then back. It was about 16 miles all by myself. The trail was covered in complete fog that day. I could barely see 2 feet in front of me, but yet I did it. And I came off the trail that day, and I was very teary-eyed. I was just excited and very proud. The thing that led me to solo hiking was just the fact that I had a couple hikes planned, had to cancel them just because I didn't have anybody to go with me on those, and I was scared to go by myself. So finally I said, it's one of these things where my body knows what to do out there. I just need to trust in my ability, trust in myself, and just go do it. And I did. That very first solo hike day, the Middle Prong Trail, Greenbrier Ridge to the AT, I sat in my car for about 15 minutes just talking myself into getting out of the car, opening the door, getting out. The first couple miles, I was a little nervous looking behind me, making sure, nobody was following me, anything like that. But after a while, my body settled into that rhythm, and it was okay. And I absolutely love it. If you're thinking about solo hiking, let me just tell you this. Be courageous. Maybe start out small. Don't do anything crazy remote. Go on a popular trail, something that's comfortable for you. Go as far as you want to go, turn around, come back. Be brave. You can do it. If you're a hiker, you know what you're doing. Just know where you're going. Be prepared. Take all those essential things that you think you need and go for it. Don't let anything stop you. Be independent and go for it. Thanks.
So I'm sitting here in the shelter all by myself. It's raining. I think it's going to rain all day. I'm doing 13 and a half miles, solo day trip. I love to solo hike because I find it very empowering. I think as I've gotten older, I have a very middle-class life, and I think it makes me soft. And I don't want to be soft. I like to be a little bit gritty. I like to do things that others aren't. I do not like to follow the crowd. I like spending time with me. I'm kind of fun. I make myself laugh a lot out here. because I make a lot of mistakes. I started with baby steps. I took one little hike and felt really good about myself afterwards, but I was scared, but I did it. And then I took another hike that was farther, and another, and each time I became less scared. I also read a lot, equipped myself with the knowledge of what to do if something happened while I was by myself. I carry pretty much enough to spend the night on the trail if something like that. I break my ankle or my leg. I always leave information with my family where I'm going to be. And then I started backpacking by myself. My first overnight was pretty close to my home. It was close enough that if I got there and I set up and I was scared to death, I could go back to my car and go home. So I could just hit the top of the shelter and scare me. And got through that night. Actually got in really late to my campsite, and I had to set up in the dark, which was not smart, but anyway, I did it. I was scared, but I survived. And then I've done several more. I've done back overnight trips to shelters by myself, and I've never been alone in a shelter. Everyone I've ever met has been wonderful. Sometimes I'm the only woman, sometimes not. But I've never had any issues. I think hikers in general are really wonderful people. What else? I believe in baby steps. I just took it a little bit at a time. It will always probably be scary to me, like right now. I just heard something back there. It scared me. But that's also why I like it. I love something. I think life begins outside of your comfort zone. We've all seen that or heard that. And that rings very strong with me. A couple times a week, I got to step outside of my comfort zone and be a little worried, be a little scared to be happy. So that's my story. That's why I like to do it. I encourage all women to do it, but I encourage you to do it smartly. Read up about it. Read what you should be carrying. And I think you'll be fine. It's probably safer than going to Target late at night, walking out into the parking lot. I mean, it really is.
Wow, that was some really awesome stories from those women. And because I don't want this video to just be from a woman's perspective about solo hiking, I also wanted to give you the guy's perspective. And so I have my friend and fellow YouTuber, Braden with Plug It In Hikes, who is also a 2-time record holder, fastest 900 miler for the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. And so without further ado, Benny, take it away.
Hello, Hiking with Braids. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story, my experiences with you guys. Now, a lot of people already know who I am. My name is Benny Braden, also known as Plug It In. And a lot of folks know I do a lot of solo backpacking. It's just something that I love, something that I enjoy, and honestly, it's something that I need. Hiking solo, you're either going to like it or you're going to hate it. For me, I love it. I love it because it allows me to get rid of mental junk. It allows me to clean house mentally. Most of you guys know that I was a first responder for well over a decade, worked as an EMT, firefighter, rescue, dive rescue, headed water rescue team for our county, was on the statewide water rescue team, actually taught for the Tennessee Association of Rescue Squads in their Swiftwater Rescue Program. So in that time frame, you could say I've seen a lot of death. And in just a result of all the traumatic stuff that I've seen, I ended up, discovering that I had PTSD. That's why I typically backpack by myself. I love having that solitude, that chance to kind of clean out the mental junk out of my head. I usually tell people it's like I have a desk in my head. And this desk is just piled up. It's just crammed full of just stacked so high you can't even hardly see the top. And all these things are, rescue calls that I've done, that I've been on, things I've seen, different things of that nature. So what I get a chance to do when I'm out there backpacking, I'll take one of those items off my desk and I'll pray about it. I'll try to make sense of it. Now, I don't always make sense out of it. Sometimes it may take me a day, sometimes it's hours, sometimes it's several days to just one file. But then when I'm done with that, I can reach in and grab another one and do it all over again. But anyways, that's why I solo backpack. The mental benefits that I receive from being out in nature far outweigh anything that modern medicine could ever do for any of us that suffer from PTS, depression, or anxiety.
I loved getting their perspective on solo hiking, and I hope that you all enjoyed that. And I just want to give a big thank you to Christina and Melissa and Molly and Benny for sharing their stories. And as promised, I want to give you some tips that will hopefully make it a little easier to get out and do your first solo hike or your first solo backpacking trip. So my first tip, if you want to go out and do a solo backpacking trip, is that you pick a campsite that is not too far from your car. Something that's maybe even just a couple of miles. And by doing that, you've allowed yourself that if you were to get to the campsite and be alone and you realize, I can't do this. I cannot spend the night out in the woods by myself. And you can for the most part, pretty easily hike back to your car in a relatively quick amount of time. And it kind of gives you that taste of being out there alone in the woods without necessarily having to hike miles and miles out. So my second tip is to pick a campsite where other people are already staying, where they're booked. Now, I know not all parks that's an easy thing to do, because a lot of parks you're not necessarily booking online in advance, but for definitely like in the Smoky Mountain National Park, you can kind of see if there's other people that are booked. Even though there's other people there, you're by yourself. I just think it really makes the transition of sleeping out in the woods by yourself a lot easier, and a lot easier to kind of become more confident in yourself. And then just another tip is pick a campsite that you've already stayed at before. I mean, just go somewhere that you've already camped at. If you have not ever done any backpacking, I honestly would recommend that you go backpacking with somebody else before you go by yourself. Definitely at least have already done a trip with other people, just so you know if you even like backpacking, and so you know how to use your own gear. So one more tip as far as for solo backpacking is to have done a solo hike by yourself. Do a solo hike before you do a solo backpacking trip, because you could do those other things, but if you've never even hiked alone by yourself, that's scary enough. And then now I'm going to give you some tips on what to do to get out and do a solo hike by yourself. The first tip is to pick a popular trail, because when you do that, you're not going to be alone. You're alone, you're hiking by yourself, but there's other people. So not only do you have to worry a lot less about the injury side of it, or possibly even getting lost, because there's other people on the trail to hike with. Another tip is do a trail you've already done. I mean, hike a trail that you've already hiked before, that you're familiar with, because you'll already know what to expect on the trail. You'll already kind of be familiar with the trail. I hope that this video empowers you to overcome your fears and become not only a more confident hiker and person, but to hopefully help you gain some knowledge and awareness on hiking and backpacking. Of course, if solo hiking and solo backpacking is not your thing, and that's something you're just not interested in doing at all, that is totally fine as well. I mean, this video in no way is my intent to try to push you to go out and do a solo hike. I hope this video helps empower you that if that's something you're interested in doing, that you can do it. Just be sure to do your research. Be sure to try to learn as much information as you can and become familiar with hiking and backpacking, you know, before ever attempting any type of solo hiking. Anyway, I hope this video was at least somewhat inspiring and hopefully help give you some encouragement. And know that you don't have to let the fears that you have dictate the decisions that you make in your life.